Good day everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is a Marvel Contest of Champions video. This is a CCP video in which I get a champion to review that's going to be entered into the game very soon. And that said champion that's up for review is Ebony Maw. This is a 4-star version, level 99 signature. And unfortunately the first criticism that I always seem to have with these CCP champion reviews is it doesn't really give you a full idea of the extent of damage output when you scale up the champion to a 5-star or 6-star based on things like Cavalier crystals, which largely produce these champions at a bit more of damage output. So what may be a little bit underwhelming at times could be better when you get the champion at 5-star and 6-star. Ipso facto, the whole kind of Diablo incident, when a champion that isn't really rated particularly well, based on the 4-star not looking particularly good, the 5 and 6 stars maybe look a bit better based on your own skill level. So in a nutshell, take it with a pinch of salt, whatever I say in this video, and draw your own conclusions. And as well, it's a shame I can't use the champion to kind of test out in Act 6, but hey, you can't have everything. Ebony Maw is one of 3 champions that will be released in conjunction with this Avengers Endgame event. And yeah, I'm all for new champions being brought in, but the issue is when one champion is quite clearly the best champion of the 3, and let's face it, by the end of this video, I will come to the same conclusion I'm going to say now. Cull Obsidian has been the best champion for damage output and is the champion that has been overly hyped. Whether or not you agree or disagree with that, Ronan does some good amount of damage, but it isn't as extensive as Cull Obsidian. And likewise with Ebony Maw, it is a usage in certain situations, a utility-based champion that we're going to really focus on now. Ebony Maw falls into the same kind of or similar category as a champion like Dormammu, in that the further you go with the signatures, the more damage you're going to do with Degeneration. Except the damage done by Degeneration is actually a little bit less. However though, if you complete missions, then similar to something like Soul Leech, that is your way of kind of upscaling that Degeneration damage. So in short, missions from Thanos as well as the other Black Order do retain the same type of thing. Persistent charges, doing missions, and as you can see, mission 1, nullify a buff from an opponent, cause the opponent to lose power, and cause the opponent to falter and miss. This is actually a lot more easier to achieve, especially if you start off and do like a heavy attack, like parry, go into a heavy attack quite early, and then look to build up things to then get to that point of losing power, doing falter and miss. It is a little bit more easier to achieve. And this is when the strategy comes in that if the opponent you're going up against doesn't have a buff, then you put in the SP1 and then obviously you're putting a Fury attack on there. It may be good planning to go, right, if I build up to a point of saying I'm just close to my L2, and then what I'm doing is I'm putting in my L1, you've put on a Fury buff onto the enemy, you've then got 6 seconds to then hit into and then go smash another L1, which then would nullify it. So therefore you're able to complete that mission because obviously you need to nullify a buff. But if the enemy doesn't have a buff, then that is the method. Build up close to an L2, smash in an L1, build up quickly to the L1, within that 6 seconds, and you've done the nullifying. That's the 3 missions completed, and you can get that persistent charge to then go into the next battle. Happy days. In theory, that's how it works. Now, you've completed all missions, you're building up this persistent charges going from battle to battle. So how does that improve the whole aspect of the Degeneration? As I said, if you compare it to champions like Dormammu, how do you get that increased? Well, it all goes back to the signature ability. When Ebony Maw inflicts his opponents with a Degeneration, all deterioration passives are consumed, each adding 218.54 damage to the Degeneration. So that is where they're going from battle to battle, the whole aspect of persistent charges come in, and the whole aspect with getting deterioration. It's a bit kind of like complex, and it's one thing that I would say is a little bit disappointing about champions that are coming in nowadays. They either become too overcomplicated for their own good, but there is some decent utility, especially when you're going up against champions like Hyperion. Because the developer even says here, some of the notes is that if you're going up against Hyperion, then using the heavy attack as well as the SP3 method can allow you to power control and also keep the champion's rate of power gain at bay. As said here, depleting power. So that is very nice and a very unusual option for power control, especially considering that there's only a very few champions that do off the L3 a good amount of power control. I'm not saying there's a huge amount, but you don't see a huge amount of champions being able to do that. I mean, Dormammu certainly doesn't do that, but you can definitely see it with this champion. I definitely know that you've got some decent options with Red Skull and a few others as well. But if you're looking for another option that's got class advantage, then this could be a really decent option. Very easy to use as well, going into a heavy attack as opposed to any other special attacks like L1, L2 for power control. The question is, what makes this champion stand out? What is so unique? What is so good? And I think it really stems from a defensive perspective, especially if you remember going up against this champion this month for the event quest. Whether or not it's for the quest for the stones, the Infinity Stones thing, the side quest that, well, less we talk about that, the better. But the fact is, he was annoying when it came to Avengers Forever. And especially having to lose focus. You have to really lose the focus of the champion in order to really get through it as easily as possible. And that whole thing is to lose the focus, is doing a heavy attack or putting in an L3. As you should know by now, in the right hand corner, there's something called Persuasion. And when that's on the enemy, as it builds up, it is going to be positive for you, and is a point that's going to help out completing one of the missions. But the main thing is it's going to be a frustration if you're going up against this guy as a defender. So for every 20 persuasion the opponent gains, they are inflicted with a falter passive lasting 3 seconds, increasing to 5 seconds against cosmics. Enemies inflicted with falter have a 100% chance to miss. At 100 persuasion, the opponent is persuaded and inflicted with a Black Tongue passive, reducing power gain from all sources by 30%. Black Tongue is not affected by ability accuracy and lasts for the rest of the fight. While Black Tongue is active, the opponent is inflicted with 1 deterioration passive every 6 seconds. So yeah, really frustrating and could really mess up players when it comes to Alliance Wars defense placing. You have to really make that decision. Can you see this champion in your roster? Do you indeed kind of feel strongly with this champion? What other champions work around buffs or kind of nullifying buffs, similar to Symbiote Supreme, champions that work with buffs like Morningstar, Magic, Dr. Voodoo, Dormammu, the list goes on. Even champions that work with positive effects for themselves and kind of enhancing their signature ability. For example, Ronan, sorry, I've got to not mix those two up. One's kind of an assassin, one is a galactic being, Ronan. So would you, in this kind of circumstance, look towards using that champion? Especially if you're looking at a champion that could be stun immune, gets a load of buffs, then would you go down the route of using a champion like Ebony Maw for the situation? It may be that case. But also not forgetting Loki. In that situation, you would probably want to go down the route of keeping this guy, because maybe it'd be better to have that degeneration effect and the idea of persistent charges and further damage output based on going from battle to battle. Just before we come to the conclusion, I just want to share with you some developer notes, in particular the thoughts on the signature ability. The damage added by each deterioration seems small, but keep in mind these can stack up to 20, and once the opponent has been inflicted with Black Tongue, will stack up even faster, allowing Ebony Maw to output some decent damage here. Additionally, while fighting an opponent with a lot of buffs, Ebony Maw can build these passives at an alarming rate, since his special 1 attack can nullify up to 4 buffs from an opponent. In some aspects I do agree with that, but it does seem that the champion is a bit more hard work in order to get to that point, and a lot of other players, especially in the CCP, have agreed with that type of thing. It takes a little bit of training to then get to that point of going, okay, so I'm managing to trigger off that good amount of damage by degeneration from deterioration. There's a lot of D's. All I need now is a DDD from Dorky Diggity Dave in order to get the D's of the DDD. You know what I mean? The developers point to the usage of Mystic Dispersion, Glass Cannon, Recoil and Willpower for the benefit of the champion, especially with Recoil very interestingly going, right, well if you push to the L3, then that is going to be good to kind of bypass some of the damage that usually comes from that particular mastery. My final thoughts on Ebony Maw is that it's a great champion for nullifying buffs. Does it compare with level of damage output very quickly without any kind of effort to others like Symbiote Supreme? No. If you want a champion that is going to be all about this persistent charge type things and missions, similar to Cull Obsidian, but not that instant or kind of quicker to damage, deliver huge amounts, then this is going to be a champion for you. If you're then looking to say, right, there's 6 fights going into the end boss fight, and that's a point going, this champion stacks well going into there, then yes, that may be the case. But if you're looking for a champion for that instant damage, instant stuff, then this isn't champion for you. Great nullifying, great power control, But when it comes to the champion's usage, I think it's really much a defensive-based champion. But again, let me reiterate the point I made at the start of the video, that this doesn't represent the 5-star or the 6-star. So it could be a case that when this damage is on a different starage level, will it be more than 200 per tick for the 4 seconds of the degeneration effect? I don't know. We don't have that information. But if we had that, maybe it would give us a better and clear picture of, is this champion worth hyping up to the community? But I digress. What are your thoughts on Ebony Maw? Defensive, good at buff nullification, good degeneration effects? What are your thoughts? Thoughts in the comment section below. Now that has been the video all about Ebony Maw. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Marvel Contest and Champions based content. I've been Rich the Man, and I shall catch you in the next one. Bye bye for now.